Hi, this is Jenny Walker from DigiGoods and Printables ELA. Welcome to Section 11 of my argumentative essay writing workshop, providing evidence to prove your claim and elaboration and discussion of your evidence. If you've stumbled upon this video from YouTube, you can find a link for this workshop in the description. First of all, great news! You've already collected most or all of the evidence in the pre-writing activities. To build your body paragraphs, you'll need to dig a little deeper into your evidence and make sure that this evidence still works with your essay. Often, people change direction as they progress through their writing. This is fine, but you need to continuously make sure that everything still relates and supports your claim. Although we've already learned a lot about evidence in a previous section, let's recap and look at some examples of two different types of evidence. One is an expert quote and the other is a statistic. On the first notebook, let's read together. The first part in purple is a transition and the evidence is highlighted in pink. According to Russell Cambridge, professor at University of California, quote, schools that committed to providing more nutritious lunches found that not only did grades and test scores improve, but also behavioral problems decreased dramatically, end quote. Now, what kind of evidence is this? It's an expert quote. This is a quote from a valid source because this person is an expert in this field. He has obviously earned a degree and even teaches on this subject. So this is a strong piece of evidence that clearly supports the reason of the thesis. Let's look at a second type of evidence, which is a statistic. According to the National Chamber for Education Statistics, quote, within 1 year after the implementation of uniforms, fights and muggings at many schools decreased by 50%, while sexual offenses were reduced by 74%, end quote. This is a statistic, which is a fact represented by numbers that proves that school uniforms decrease violence. Scroll down to the next slide and take a few minutes to watch these two really great videos on how to use evidence and how to quote your evidence within your essay. Pause this video and take all the time that you need. Let's talk for a little bit about elaboration and discussion. To elaborate, you can't simply drop evidence into a body paragraph and be done with it. That wouldn't be very convincing at all. Instead, you will need to discuss and explain and expand upon your evidence. This is called elaborating. Elaboration makes your writing rich and convincing and easy to read. You can elaborate before and after the evidence, or one or the other. The next slide will provide questions, to the right you can look at the questions that will help guide you to coming up with some elaboration for your essay. Here are some questions that can help. What is the significance of the evidence presented? What is meant by the evidence presented? What does the evidence prove? What theme can be found in the evidence? And how do the subtopics relate? Now, it's important to know that not all of these questions will work with every topic. So these are just suggestions. You may or may not be able to use them. There may be other questions that would guide you. Let's scroll down to the next slide and see how this elaboration looks in an actual paragraph. Here is elaboration before and after the evidence. First of all, notice that the evidence is in quotation marks and that the elaboration is highlighted in purple. This is the discussion. This is the words that are written by the writer, not words of an expert or a piece of evidence that is copied into the essay. The most impressionable teens can be led to make bad decisions involving drugs, sex, and even crime. According to WebMD, here's the evidence, teenagers who are more likely to succumb to peer pressure often feel isolated from peers, lack direction in their lives, are uncertain about their place in a peer group, and have low self-esteem. And then further elaboration. This is why it is vital for teens to choose their friendships wisely and never be afraid to let go of a bad relationship. Okay. In the first piece of elaboration, notice that this elaboration explains what is meant by the evidence. The most impressionable teens can be led to make bad decisions. This explains what the evidence means. And notice that the last piece of elaboration explains why the evidence is important. So remember, when you're writing your paragraphs, your body paragraphs, you'll provide a topic sentence, some evidence, and some discussion or elaboration to make your paragraph rich and convincing. Now you should be ready to scroll down to the next slide to begin compiling your evidence. Since you've already found your evidence and your sources, you can scroll back up to the evidence section and paste your evidence into the little notebooks. Notice that this slide is only for the evidence that supports your first reason in your thesis, and that this will go into your first body paragraph, which would actually be paragraph number 2. You'll have slides just like this to gather the evidence for your other body paragraphs. After you've pasted your evidence, go ahead and scroll down to the next slide and see if you can elaborate on this evidence. You can use the questions to the left to guide your discussion if they apply. Continue through this section compiling your evidence and creating some elaboration for each reason and body paragraph. Notice there are gold stars on each of these slides indicating that later you can copy and paste these into your body paragraphs. And that concludes this section of your argumentative essay writing workshop. In the next section, we will begin putting all of the pieces of your body paragraphs together. Once again, if you've stumbled upon this video on YouTube, you can find a link to the workshop in the description. I'm Jenny Walker from DigiGoods and Printables ELA, and I'll see you in the next section.